But we're gonna play PowerWash Simulator 2 now. And let me just wait. Do I have everything set up proper? Hold on a second. I thought so. Okay, let's see. Hold on a second. Let me put the pin on that. Let me unpin there. So, optimize. No, I don't want to hide it. And let's see. Play. Okay, perfect. Oh yeah, there's new deal. Oh wait, I wasn't even. There we go. Okay, there we go. Rain fever, sun down. Rain fever, buzzing all around. Rain fever, sun. Okay, let's see. Skip that actually. Okay, perfect. Oh wait, why did I do that? You know what? I think I. Oh, I know what I was. What button was it? Not that button. Just find the button. Every time. Every fucking time. It's always great when they're super close together, you know? Can I? Oh, nope, I can't use my mouse. I just tested it. No, I can't. What's that? Which is helicopter something or another. What am I doing? No, it's not that one. It's this one, I think. Yeah. Wait, hold on. Okay. Then yeah, it is yellow. Cause I plan it, get it, haha. Or so. Oh wait, I forgot that people on YouTube won't be able to hear this, so. Okay, relax. Oh my god, those. I'm guessing. Oh yeah, I forgot I could open those doors. Nice. Um, sorry, I was just thinking because of kitty history. Imagine they have a kitty Trump. It's just a orange-haired cat or whatever, but they like dyed that fur. They're really just a white cat, but they dyed their hair orange to seem cool. Like, I don't know. Then a different comes up. Oh no, this is the rotor, so we'd have to. What the fuck? Stop as the temple. Whoa, what the hell is this? Okay. Oh wow. Sprinkles. One. Here's the brother. Okay. Okay. Oh, fuck. Hold on. Oh, I didn't even know those were there. Whoops. One. No, God, I got dizzy for a sec. Or not dizzy. I got distracted by thoughts, I guess? I don't know. I was gonna say, I wonder what's so bad about Geely, and then I realized it's a romance film, I think, if I remember correctly. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not doing. I'm still trying to make sure that I got everywhere. Oh, I didn't get the top of these. I think it was the other one that I was thinking of. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Uh, fine. I know I have to do this at some point, right? Or somehow I have to do that, but I just realized how I am doing this wrong or something. Am I doing this wrong? Yeah, that's a helicopter pilot. What was this? This rotor icing. Oh, you know what? Oh, I forgot I have to get in there too, so great. How do I do this again? I do that. There we go. One track all for now. Okay, it's not done on the top. That one was though. Oh, that's where I was missing. Okay, I see. There we go. I was wondering why that wasn't letting me clean it fully at first. I'm not cleaning one of these. Yeah, that one. Um, wait, I have an idea of where it was that I didn't. Aha! There it is. Oh, okay. I have to go through here and clean this. Wait, I can fold the seats? How was I supposed to know that? I didn't realize that. Okay, that's kind of cool though. Is that fun? You can fold the fucking. Ugh, God damn it! I wish I knew that. Even if I get full control over my right hand, I kind of like using the controller better because it may be slower than when I have uh my mouse because I go like, oh, hold on, I go like this, you know, trying to do everything. That's not what I want to do anymore, you know. How do I? Okay, there we go. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Okay. I'm not used to some of the buttons so well, but I don't care. Wait, do I have money for that? I think I do. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna check my phone real quick for something. Nope, still not here. No, that's not the right one. Please set. Wait, did I miss it? Oh no, that's just shipped. Come in. Sorry about that, everyone. What the? Hold on, what the fuck? Registered input? Wait, I am so confused at the moment why it didn't like feel like, hey, you know? What did I change? Explicit capture? I don't know what that means. A wild. Oh wait, hold on. Integration commands. Yeah. Okay, that's what I was trying to do. Well, I'm trying to figure something out. Hmm. Why did that not work? Oh, maybe it's that one? Oh wait, no, did I turn that on by accident? Whoops. I'm gonna keep that. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Got distracted. What the hell is Liptor? I think it's if I Hey Google, what's Lipitor? Oh, okay. It raises good cholesterol and lowers bad cholesterol. Hmm, interesting. Good to know. I wonder if Aaron's ever tried Lipitor or if it's just basic knowledge that he has or something. Why the fuck can't you hear that ear right now? Oh no, it's probably just how quiet it is. Okay, I didn't get this though. Did I not get this? Hold on. Or no, I got that wall already. Carriage wheel axle? Okay. Carriage wheel. Oh, carriage! I forgot there was a carriage. There's like, what part of the helicopter is that? Which one is it? This one or the other one? Oh no, it's this one. Okay. Oh no, it's both? Carriage wheel. Oh, it's this, isn't it? No. No, it is this. That's the axle. Okay. Ah, there we go. And ding, I did it! Oh, I don't know why I'm watching that. I don't need to. Continue. Finish its treehouse? Wait. Did it get dirty again, or was I not in the tree? I thought I wasn't. Oh no, it's outside of the treehouse. Got it. Oh shit. A second. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I couldn't inside, and then how the fuck did they get it on outside? I don't know. Wait, I'm definitely missing something. What was I doing? I was doing, oh, there's a hidden gnome in the house. Okay, she's got a bird skin and millennium. Oh, no, no one I wanted. Okay, anyway, it's in here. Nope, nothing in there. Oh, I remember that face from the show, actually. What the fuck is this? Oh, I see what it is. Hold on. M plus PB? Princess Bubblegum. Marceline. Oh, that's funny! What the hell's part of this? I wanna know what this does. I wonder if the people that made it Adventure Time okayed the Marceline plus Princess Bubblegum like ship. Okay, I see what's wrong. Okay, I see now. Okay, neat. Okay. So, I forgot the button for a second. Let's just do this. Wait a second. I think I may have some washer equipment I can buy. Let's see. I don't. I don't have. Oh, I don't have the Prima Vista 2000 I have, though. Oh, but I can't do anything with that. Or whatever. Doesn't matter. I want to see the different references. No, but Sienna or however you say it actually is a pretty fun game. Just my ADHD and stuff. And also I couldn't find something and I wanted to play Backpack Boy today. Apparently I already beat that, but then I got an achievement for doing something that I didn't think was gonna, well, I didn't know was gonna be an achievement. Oh, that's what this is. Okay. Right? Where is it? Oh, I can't go up all the way though. Oh, there he is again. Damn it. I didn't do it right. Okay, I'm guessing I have to do the other one. Okay, whatever. I'm gonna look around real quick first. Okay. Anyway, let's go back to where I was. Where was I though? What the fuck is it? Oh, it's a skull. Okay, I see. Oh yeah, I was. What the hell is this? Is that was a yellow hangy thing? Okay, I'll do this. Right here. I had that feeling. I had that feeling. Wait, is this the banana guy's? No, it can't be because it looks kind of like it. Wait, didn't Weird Al or was that Tom Kenny that? No, because Tom Kenny was Ice King. Was that just who was? Hey Google, what character did Weird Al play in Adventure Time? If I remember, it was the banana. Hey Google, who did Weird Al play in Adventure Time? Alfred Yankovic. Banana Man. Yep, I was right. I hate that it told me Weird Al after I tried that and it kept thinking weird W or something, you know. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah, he was trying to go to space or something. Yeah, that was Weird Al, which makes sense. I think the character was weird in itself, but also, aren't a lot of Weird Al's characters weird? Just you know, yeah, he played he played himself in it, who was just a horse in disguise, right? In barnyard, back to back at the barnyard or something like that. Oh yeah, doesn't that have like a trans icon in it too? Back at the barnyard. If I remember correctly, jokingly well, if not jokingly, like jokingly serious, you know, where it's like Otis is a trans icon or whatever, which I can get behind. I mean, he's a male cow, like probably trans male, you know, and he has udders, you know. I need to get back to I can do this. Okay, I'll keep those up for now. I literally had to say Alfred Yankovic just to get to understand me. And yes, I used to do Bixby for a bit, but it's not working for some reason for me. Bixby. Bixby. No, this doesn't want to work. Google's better anyways. Okay, good. I thought maybe it would think I said it, you know? Let's see, did I miss anything? No, not yet. The friend told me I'm nude. I mean, what? I'm not nude, by the way. I'm actually wearing pants. You know what? I'll be right back. I thought he was about to see me there for a second. Please don't. My hips don't lie. Da, 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 da. Oh. Fuck me sideways, no. As I get closer, oh. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm a-okay. Like, I just got so scared I don't even remember screaming, holy shit. Yeah! That worked, that worked, that worked, it worked, it worked. No! Give me one! Give me one, no! Ryan, calm down, Jesus Christ. You don't understand! Hey Google, call mom.
Yeah?
Bitch. I just said that as a joke. But she'll either call me back or like something else, you know? That was a joke. She knows it was a joke, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, here we go. Rainbow in the dark. Here we go. Here we go.
Ow. Distracted by shit, you know? Speaking of shit, Raid Shadow Legends. The only way I'll fall off is probably if you tilt the car over. Shit, come back! No, I'm just kidding, by the way. I'm still on top of the roof.
Fuck you. Okay.
Oh, no, 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 no. Ah! Fuck! Ah, shit! I shouldn't have turned around. One way or another, I'm gonna get ya. I'm gonna get ya. One way or another, I'm gonna find ya. I'm gonna kill ya. Over. Ding! Finally, Jesus fuck. It's taking too long. I come faster. Ding! I come faster than that. Ding! Fuck! That was so bad. Please, please, Excuse my language there.
In its full furry glory. To my friends, it's Baz. To my enemies, it's Ratty Pesca. Well, I'm a wombat, but you don't usually get to choose your nickname, eh?
He's Australian, mate. He got Vegemite stuck in his teeth. Sorry about that, I'm back. Okay, back. And where are people? I don't know, but I hear banging in the background, so it's probably somebody moving something or more work on that or something. I don't know. Okay, let's see. Wait, I wonder if I could do that. Hi, Pocket. How are you today? Oh wait, I'm shaking that booty. Oh, I love Ruffy's fucking emotes. They're so cute. Oh my god, is that like? Is he like, and you know, like no brain, only explosion? That's cute. Skadabadabada. Wonder if he. Oh, is the pickup thing good? Spread to go. Skadabadabada. This one specific. Why the hell is that not working? Hold on. That's what I thought. Hold on. Oh, there's a new version of Songify. That's why nobody could do song things. Okay, here we go. I think I fixed it. Yep, I fixed it. Sorry about that, everyone. That song is from my childhood. Literally. Like, I'm not even kidding. If I remember correctly, it's from a Steve Irwin album or whatever, where they have Steve Irwin. Oh shit! I I should say that because this song is playing and it's from the Steve Irwin album that the Wiggles did like early 2000s or whatever. Robert Irwin, if I remember his name, Steve Irwin's son is taking on the mantle of what Steve Irwin did. You know, just like educating people on animals and man, the Irwins did such a good job raising their kids. I mean, the mom did most of it, but at least Steve Irwin like did a little bit of it, you know, before he died. Rest in peace, Steve Irwin. He was such a good guy, and now people want to, well, like idiots on the internet, like that vegan teacher, want to like cancel him for animal abuse when really there was no animal abuse. Like there's so much right with Steve Irwin. I'm sad that he had to die to a stingray, but also I'm glad that his wife, I forgot her name. Shush. Okay, maybe what now, but like shush. But his wife literally destroyed the tape with the only recording of him dying, which is good. It's one of those things you don't want to release that to the world because, like, I don't know how to explain it, but like, she saw it. She's like the only person that really saw it besides the people that were there, I think, if I remember correctly. She destroyed the recording because it's like, that's not how I want him to be remembered, you know? And that's not how he's remembered. He's remembered for what their kids do and what she does, you know? I Robert Irwin, or his son, I found him doing YouTube, well, not YouTube videos himself, but he's been doing some things on YouTube with bigger people. Like, he had questions asked to him, like, I forgot what his favorite dinosaur was, but it was, a dinosaur that not many people know and stuff. But right when he got the question, what's your favorite dinosaur, he immediately said it. And I don't know how to explain it. It's just like, I like it. He's like, oh, hi Snell. And he's like doing what his father did without being his father. He looks like his father a little bit, like a way younger version of his father. Like if you look up Robert Irwin now, next to his father, you'll be like, Yep, the genes are there. You know, JB. Oh, James Baxter. That definitely has to be what that's a reference to. But yeah, you know what I should do? I should be listening to a podcast on stream. Not like in the background or something. You know what? Maybe I should make a channel for recommending good podcasts. Hmm. And still make it so people can, like, you know, request songs that'll play after a podcast is done. You know what? I think I'm gonna do that. Actually, hold on. Let me find a podcast. Hey, Pocket, do you know any podcasts? Podcast. I could do that. I could do that. That would be funny if I did that, though. Oh, Distractible. I followed them. Okay. I don't want to listen to the Misfits podcast. Or these ones that I. Oh, I follow. Oh, I follow some of these guys. Okay. I could do this one too. You know what I should do? Sorry, I'm like. What's this? Synth. No. You know what? Sure. Why not follow Ray William Johnson? I'm trying to find one that I would like. Stories to fall asleep to? Okay, that's a playlist. Okay. Can I listen to these in order? Newest to oldest. Oldest to newest, actually. I got an ad. I don't know how I got an ad. What the hell is it? I have premium. Let's see. How many ads? One of three? Ooh. Um. Uh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry, everyone, but there will be ads, so. Oh. Okay, never mind. I get it. I get it. Okay, so I figured it out. Podcasts don't have ads. No, podcasts have ads, even with premium. Got it. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay. That makes a little sense, but you know. Okay, cool. Oh, does it not show podcasts? File settings. What? You know what? I'll keep that up. So, am I able to pause this? So, if everybody on YouTube wants to know, I'm listening to the Distractables podcast with Mark, Bob, and Wade. Well, Markiplier, Bob, and Wade. My Skirm, and I forgot what Bob's name was. Oh, I was wondering what that noise was.
I have arrived.
Hi, Levi, how are you today? We're listening to the Destructibles podcast, but you can request a song. Just to let you know. If you want. I get that. Hold on. Papa. Was on my own. You had a bad. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you're okay. Are you okay, Levi? Are you in the hospital? Are you okay? You know? Okay, good. I'm guessing you did go to the hospital though, if it was that big, you know? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Hugs. What if I can turn this up a little? Yeah, okay. It's fine. Damn. Well, you know what that means? That if you guys like swapped insurance, you know? That's so dumb. One question is okay, I'm not gonna blame you for it, but why were you stopped on a highway? Yeah. Oh, they owned up? Okay, good. At least they owned up. I'm guessing they gave you the insurance and stuff. for that information, so everything's good, hopefully. How the sorry, at least I owned up to it and stuff, but like, how the fuck don't you stop? Hold on, I can't hear this all that well while talking. Is this too loud now? Yeah, I can imagine. Ooh, poor guy. I mean, did your earbuds go off? Oh, well, I'm glad you're okay. You probably have some pain though, right? I I can't remember if you have a job, but if you have a job, call your boss and tell them that you got in a car accident and stuff, and that you may need to take a few days. You know? Yeah. I know it hurts, but stretches I think could help. Like minor stretches, like a little bit of exercise and stuff. Okay, a few days ago, got it. Yeah, most bosses, well, not most, but not all of them, but most bosses will be like, oh, you got in a car accident? Oh, you can stay out for however long you need, you know. I'd say go to the doctor, though, if you can, to, like, make sure it's not too bad, you know? You know what? Why am I still in that tree? Ah, I see. They want skins. I see. They want to make sure that you don't have a back thing. I'm, I don't know if I want to listen to this, but maybe another time. Let's see, what podcasts do I follow? You know what? I do like this one. What the fuck? I don't remember. Okay. Should I do this one? You know what? I'll do this one just for gaffs and stuff. Sorry, the fun part about that was the laugh track. Oh, Jesus. Oh my god. I forgot about that joke. I knew that one was coming. It's a laugh track, though. Wait. That's. I wonder if it's somebody with the outer voice. I fucking knew it. It's an AI fucking dad jokes thing. God damn it. Wait, did it not work? Hold on. Why did I not hear it? Yeah, that's. Hold on. Did Watership not work? Super stinky. Oh, I just didn't hear it. Okay. God, I wanted to hear. Actually, why not just comedy podcasts? Funniest stand-up comedy. This is just fucking. Okay. Comedy podcasts. I've heard Kevin Hart. Why not Kevin Hart? What was that? Wait, is Kevin. Okay, that should be fine. Okay, found it. Found something. Found something. Oh, this is the newest. Oh, I see these stream moments. I didn't even realize that. Oh no. Sorry to hear that, Levi. Why the hell is it not? Oh, I have an idea. No, it's not. I don't know which one it is. What do you mean sleepies? Is one. Oh, you should go to bed then. Night night. Hold on, let me, not registered, right? Not registered. Yeah, I'll be informed. Hold on. Let me, actions. I'll be informed, yeah. I'm saying. Oh, wait, shit. I was trying to do this. Hold on. Got distracted. Hold on. Let's start with Damon Wayans. If I can go back, thank you. Oh god, ads. Fuck. I don't give two shits. Nobody do this. Wait, wait, that's not an ad? No, that is an ad. Wait, those are ads. Whatever. So, wait, who the fuck is this? Because it's not. Oh, that is him! I was thinking someone else. Whoops. Anyway, I know who this guy is now. Okay. Yeah. What? Wait, did I do that wrong? Regex. Oh, that's why regex. Normal. Control A, Control X. There we go. Figured it out. Nice, I figured it out. Okay, sorry about that. I forgot who Damon Wayans was. I thought it was Wayne Brady. That's who I thought for some reason. And then I realized with his voice, no, that's not Wayne Brady. And then I realized, oh, yeah, I realized who it was. Ah, no, wait. I mean, yeah. I thought. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I wonder if this group of podcasts has Robin Williams or Jim Carrey in it. What is that? Okay, that must be a shadow or something. Hmm. Hold on. Oh. Oh, Jesus. I know people on YouTube can't hear it, but I can't like do anything about it. So how long have I been streaming? That's not what I wanted. I wanted moderator up. 2 hours, 38 minutes. Okay, cool. Neat. What the fuck? That's funny. Fuck, I got an ad in the middle of it. Fuck. So annoying. I wonder if it's possible you could make a podcast on Spotify without ads. I mean, uh, I mean, you gotta make your money somehow, you know? So I'm not like annoyed fully. But the AI joke one, I think, had ads if I remember correctly. And I'm just like, I thought it was like actual comedy and stuff. But nope. I knew it was AI when I heard the voice. I just thought it was based off someone or something. Hey Google, did Mike Tyson ever go to jail? Holy shit! Well, goddamn! Sorry. I can't tell if he's actually laughing at his jokes or not. Because it's like, you know. Yo, fuck. Okay, sorry, I'm getting distracted. There we go. Oh shit. Sorry for not talking much. I'm just trying to listen to the comedy, I guess. Sorry, I needed to fart. Shut up. Sorry about that. Oh, I don't care. Why can't I get up there? I can't get up there. Not what I wanted. Wait, can I just do this? Okay. But that won't work for what I want. I don't think. Or maybe it will. Damn it. Why? Um, okay, let's see right here. But what am I missing here? Oh yeah. Okay, let's see. What is in here though? Is that Meow's box or something? Like what the fuck? Where's their box there? Hmm. Damn. Come on. Get up there. Why the fuck? Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. There we go, ding. Yep, they all had bad breath. Well, it wasn't. Okay, sorry. Yep. Sorry, I'm listening to Wayne Brady, I think the name was. Brady Wayne. I think. Damon Wayne. That's what it was, I think. There we go. Wait, what? Wait, yep. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Hold on a second, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, back to the game because I got distracted. Okay, let's see. Come on. Sorry, I'm distracted by the comedy in the background. Dang. God damn it. Anyway, let's see how long I've been streaming. 3 hours and 11 minutes. Okay. So let's see who's live right now. Let's put that in. Let's see who's live right now. Okay, sorry. Let me check. What was I doing? The fuck was I doing? Oh yeah, I was checking to see who's live. Did I follow? No. Okay, that's weird. Did I accidentally? Oh, I didn't accidentally do that. Oh, okay. That's um. I'm looking through the people. Okay, I got someone. I think. I hope. You know what? Fuck it. Okay, so if everybody can join me for a raid, that would be greatly appreciated. If you can't, however, that's okay too. Copy out either of those messages and paste one of them into the chat of who we raid out to. God damn it. Hold on. We are going to raid, if I can spell right, because I don't think I did. Did I? No, I did. We're gonna raid Chaos or Nocturnum. If I can put in the name right. What did I do? Didn't I spell right? Or did he change his name? Oh, you know what? It's because it's not an O, it's a 0. Fucking idiot. We're gonna raid Chaos Star Nocturnum, who right now is playing Kingdom Hearts. I forgot which one. But if everybody can join me for raid, that'd be greatly appreciated. If you cannot, however, that's okay too. I hope you all enjoyed the stream. I hope to see you all next time.